Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Today our topic is Father to Son, a poem written by Elizabeth Jennings. Elizabeth Jennings is an American poetess. This poem pertains to your English textbook Hornbill. And this poem consists of 4 stanzas which highlight the theme of generation gap, which is prevalent in our society and is widening day by day. In today's lecture, I will try my best to explain you the first 2 stanzas of this poem, and I will also try my best to make you understand the theme of this poem, that is generation gap. First of all, let me tell you what is generation gap. Generation gap is basically the conflict of ideas, conflict of opinions, lack of communication, lack of mutual understanding between the 2 generations, that is young generation and old generation. So, how this generation gap occurs? This generation gap occurs when there is breakup of communication link, when young and old do not communicate with each other, stop talking to each other, stop sharing their happiness, joys and sorrows with other. When there is breakup of communication link between the 2 generations, automatically generation gap occurs. So what are the main reasons which result in breakup of communication link between 2 generations, between the young and the old? They are lack of mutual understanding. When both fail to understand each other, not only this, but lack of tolerance. When they don't tolerate each other, not only this, but also lack of acceptance, lack of mutual understanding, tolerance and acceptance. These are the 3 reasons which result in the breakup of communication link between the 2 generations, the young generation and the old generation, and which automatically leads to generation gap. And if this is not taken care of immediately, it will widen day by day. In this poem, Father to Son, our poet Elizabeth Jennings reveals an internal conflict, a conflict which is taking place in the mind of a father when his son grows up. What happens? In the earlier poem, loss of childhood, you have come to know that Childhood is the age of innocence. A child believes elders, follows them like a shadow, obeys their dictators unconditionally, loves them unconditionally. But when he begins to become mature, he wants to give break. He is having his own interests. He believes in his own dreamland. He wants to give practical shape to his dreams. So same thing happens here. This internal conflict takes place in the mind of every father when his child grows up. When his child begins to become mature, this same is the case here. In this poem, Elizabeth Jennings reveals this internal conflict which is taking place in the mind of father when his son grows up. When his son grows up and begins to become mature, what happens? He possesses his own interests, opinions, perceptions, desires and dreams. And when father observes all this, he becomes unhappy. And this unhappy father fails to understand the sudden change in the behavior of his child. He talks to himself that although both father and son have lived together, they have shared the same room. The son was following his father like a shadow. He was obeying him. He was loving him unconditionally. How suddenly all this happened? The angry father fails to understand this change in the behavior of his child. He tells himself that although we both have lived together for so many years in the same house, instead of bonding together, why they are drifting apart? And this gap, this drifting apart, has resulted in non-understanding and non-communication between the two. Now, the father is angry on witnessing the changes in the behavior of his child. The child is behaving like a stranger. He is not obeying the father. This whole conflict is revealed throughout this poem by Elizabeth Jennings. And in the end, the poet tells us that if both of them, both father and son, here both young and the old generation will decide to take a lead. If both generations will decide to take a lead and are willing to accept and tolerate and are willing to forget and forgive. Their relationship will improve, and by this the generation gap can be bridged. The generation gap can be bridged if both generations, if both father and son decide to take a lead. They will forget and forgive each other. Their relationship may improve. They will learn to respect each other's differences. And automatically, when they learn, when they take a lead, when they forgive and forget, when they forget and forgive each other, when they try to understand each other, this generation gap can be bridged, and they will again start to love each other. This is the message conveyed by our poet Elizabeth Jennings through this in this poem, Father to Son. Now let me try to understand the first two stanzas of this poem in this lecture. The first stanza is, I do not understand this child. The father tells to himself that he is unable to understand his child now, because some changes have occurred in his child. That is, the child is beginning to attain maturity. Something has happened to his child. He is living in his own dreamland. He is deciding. He is taking his own decisions. He wants us to give practical shape to his dreamers. So the father fails to understand his child. He says that he fails to understand his child. Though we have lived together now in the same hours for years, he says that although both have lived in the same hours, they have shared the same hours for so many years, but on witnessing this sudden change in the behavior of the child, the father is the unhappy father tells to us, to we readers, that he fails to understand how all this has happened in the child. Nothing of him so try to build up a relationship from how he was when small. The father says that he is unable to understand his own son, though they were staying in the same house for many years, but due to non-communication and lack of understanding, both son and father are unable to understand each other. The father does not know much about the interests, likes and dislikes of his son. Thus, he tries to build up the same kind of relationship as he used to have when his son was a very small child. Now the father has perhaps realized, the unhappy father, on witnessing the changes in the behavior of his child, is perturbed. He is surprised to see the sudden changes in the behavior of his child. The child which was obeying him, which was following him like a shadow for so many years, who was dictating his terms, now rebels him, now behaves like a stranger. So father tells to we readers that when the child was small, they were in a cordial atmosphere. They were accepting each other. There was mutual understanding between the two. But suddenly all this has happened. The child is behaving in a strange way. He tells us readers that he is unable to understand the likes and dislikes, opinions and interests of his child, and decides to make a cordial relationship with his child. But fails to understand how he can do this. Now he has realized that there is lack of understanding. So he wants us to take measures in order to improve this relationship between his son. Now let us see sentence number 2. Yet I have killed the seed. Yet I have killed the seed I sippened, or sown it where the land is his and none of mine. We speak like strangers. Strangers means like unknown person. There is no sign, means indication of understanding in the air. The child is built to my design, my plan, design means plan. Yet what he loves I cannot share. I cannot share means I do not know. Here in these lines, the father wonders whether it is he who is responsible for the failure of relationship. Yet have I killed the seed I sippened or sown it where. He wonders whether it is he himself who is responsible for the failure of relationship. The failure of relationship with his son, or the son is responsible. He wonders and reflects that whether he is responsible for failure of relationship with his son, or his son is responsible for failure of relationship. The land is his and none of mine. To him, although the child is his son, but perhaps he lives in a world different from him. The land is his and none of mine. Tells us, though this child is his son, he has brought up the child. In reality, the child is his son, but he is living in a different world. They are poles apart. There is difference in thinking, difference in opinions between the two. There is lack of communication between the two. We speak like strangers. He sees that though the child is his son, but he's living in a different land. They are speaking like unknown persons. There is no sign of understanding there. There is no indication that they are understanding each other. The child is built to my design, yet what he loves I cannot share. He says that they are behaving like strangers, and this is due to lack of understanding and communication gap. The father says that the child is built to my design, yet what he loves I cannot share. I cannot share means I am not knowing, I don't know. The father says that physically the child resembles him. Physically the child resembles him. Physically the child is like his father in shape and genetic build-up, in outlook. He is just like his father, just like his father. He resembles him, but he dislikes the way the child behaves. The father says that though the child resembles him, but expresses his anger on seeing the changes in the behavior of his child and declares that although in outlook the child resembles him, but he dislikes the behavior of his own child. Dislikes the behavior his child behaves. Thanks, stay blessed, and inshallah in the next lecture I will try to make you understand the further two stanzas, that is stanza number 3 and stanza number 4 of this poem Father to Son in my next lecture, and will also try my best to make you understand the poetic devices utilized or employed by the poet in this poem. Thanks, stay blessed.